And the National Basketball Association is working to mend its relationship with China after a controversial tweet from a team's general manager sparked outrage in the communist country. The now deleted post expressed support for pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong. But as a result, Beijing has suspended all NBA preseason games from being broadcast in the country. Chris Martinez reports from Los Angeles.
NBA Commissioner Adam Silver is playing defense after a controversial tweet from a team executive prompted major backlash in China. The tweet from the general manager of the Houston Rockets, which was quickly deleted, voiced support for protesters in Hong Kong.
I don't think it's inconsistent on one hand to be sympathetic to them and at the same time stand by our principles.
The Rockets have been a favorite team in China since superstar Yao Ming joined the franchise in 2002. He's now the president of the Chinese Basketball Association and has suspended the league's relationship with the Rockets as Beijing calls for an outright boycott. This fan said his remarks didn't take our feelings into consideration. It's not what he should do, so we are very angry. Rockets superstar James Harden is trying to smooth things over.
We appreciate the support that they give us individually and as an organization, so we love you.
Many fans in the U.S. say the NBA should not apologize for standing up for human rights. But the league isn't the first American corporation to give in to China after facing criticism over political differences. Companies like Mercedes-Benz, Marriott, and The Gap have landed in trouble with the communist nation in recent years. Last summer, America's 3 largest airlines all caved to China's demands to stop referring to Taiwan as its own country.
When the Chinese government is offended, they will use their considerable financial might.
The league's commissioner will meet with officials in China this week, hoping to put the controversy on the bench. Chris Martinez, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Isaac Stonefish is a senior fellow at the Asia Society Center on U.S. China Relations, and he joins me now. Isaac, thank you so much for being with us. You know, the NBA has always prided itself on fostering a certain amount of freedom of expression. How does that change, though, with China so involved in the organization's bottom line?
Changes drastically. And the problem that the NBA faces is a problem that many companies that have huge operations in China faces, which is that the Communist Party of China, the ruling political party in China, wants to be able to dictate how any institution around the world speaks about issues relating to China. So when you think about it on one level, kind of reasonable. The Chinese government wants to think about how people talk about China. But then when you have something like what we saw a few days ago, where there's outrage over a deleted tweet, it's outrageous.
And the NBA, tried to deflect this by saying, look, we don't have a political position here. But you wrote an op-ed recently that says that's not true. They actually are taking a political position here, correct?
Exactly. You can't avoid politics in China. A lot of times you would love to. A lot of times people want to say, oh yeah, I'm not taking a political stance. But by being there, you're taking a political stance. By pushing back against someone supporting Hong Kong, you're taking a political stance.
So you're saying that the NBA, regardless of what it would like to say about itself, it is aligning itself with the Communist Party.
Exactly. And one thing that the NBA is doing, which I think certainly deserves censure, is they have a training camp in the northwest Chinese region of Xinjiang, where upwards of 1 million Muslims are in concentration camps. And that is a political stance that the NBA is taking, and it's akin to being in South Africa during apartheid.
And so this is not, something that only the NBA is facing. Pretty much most of corporate America is facing this right now. China is such a huge market for so many companies, and China is finding this a very successful way, flexing their economic might. They're finding it a successful way, as you say, to silence any sort of criticism of the government. So how should Americans be responding to this?
I think I've actually been very heartened by the response. I mean, you just have to scroll through Twitter to see the opprobrium that's being heaped on the National Basketball Association for the decisions that it has made. And I think what we need, and coordinating American businesses is a very, very difficult task, but it would really be great to have an organization that can step up and say, okay, this is in the best interests of the American business community if we take this stance
So it's
on
sort of
Beijing.
a nonprofit that represents corporate America.
Exactly. And
abroad.
And there are plenty of these already, but most of them already have positions that are quite beholden on Beijing. And if any of these chambers of commerce would like to do this, fantastic. I think they should.
So it's sort of like a union for the corporations. You have to say if you are going to blackball one of us, you're going to lose business with all of us, because that's the only way then that Beijing might back down.
Exactly. And I might have to borrow that, a union for corporate America. I like that. I like that. I think that's a good description
we
for it.
think on our feet here at CBSN. But I have a question involving how the NBA should move forward, because we know that the Chinese love basketball. They are huge fans, and they watch a lot of basketball. They've imported some amazing players. Right. It's a very popular sport. You would like to believe that sports, like the arts, are above politics. Is there any way to make sports truly above politics?
No. However, the good thing for the NBA is that they have a lot more leverage than they think. Like you just pointed out, if the NBA were to be banned from China, that would certainly be really bad for the NBA, but it'd be really bad for the hundreds of millions of fans that the NBA has in China as well.
Good point.
And it makes them look at their country and think, gosh, I can't watch a basketball game that I want to watch because my government doesn't let me do that. And the Communist Party doesn't want to have to deal with the problem of millions or hundreds of millions of angry basketball fans wondering why the NBA games are no longer streaming there.
Right. Now, are you heartened by the way the NBA has responded to this particular incident, or do you think that the NBA should have been even more supportive of the Rockets general manager who made that tweet? Because they didn't fire him, which is what a lot of people thought might happen, right?
I'm glad that Commissioner Silver put out a statement supporting freedom of speech. It came a little bit late. I mean, I think they were surprised, like, frankly, most of us, with how this blew up over the weekend. And what they did that I feel like companies have to stop doing, they put out a different statement in English and Chinese. And before, there were fewer people paying attention to that. But their statement in Chinese sounded so much more toady. It was so much more sycophantic to the Chinese government. And the statement in English that they put out, I think it was over the weekend, was a lot more reasonable. But people saw the Chinese statement, it got translated into English, and then they just think, so you're lying to us in English? But what's going on here?
So you must be heartened, though, or one must be heartened by the fact that this whole incident has sparked bipartisan outrage. One of the few things in today's world that we can all sort of agree on as Americans is free speech. And I think that the Chinese must also be aware on some level that this has caused a brouhaha here as well as there, correct?
Certainly. And I think it's important when we're having this conversation to point out that there's a huge range of views about freedom of speech, about the NBA, about human rights issues in China itself. And there are plenty of people, it's a silent majority possibly, who support what the NBA is doing, who want to be able to protest, to complain about things as petty as many of the things that Americans complain about. And so this is not a dispute between the NBA and China. Right. It's a dispute between the NBA and the Chinese Communist Party.
Right. Good point. It's important to remember that. The party is not China, and China is not the party.
Exactly.
Isaac Stonefish, thank you so much for coming to see us. We always appreciate your perspective.
Thank you.